Nebraska Preps postgame with Damon Benning and Jacob Padilla.
That's the big voice guy. He lets us know it's another week of Nebraska Preps postgame. That's my main man, Jacob Padilla. The man, the myth, the legend. JP, good Wednesday to you. How goes it?
Hard to believe it's the last week of the regular season.
Gosh, it went fast.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and we had a bye, unfortunately. Yeah. So it's I thought it was dragging. I'm like, 6-7 days without a game, and then you get to this final week and we're putting the final touches on Benson, and it's like, wait a minute. Everybody's doing these playoff scenarios. Yeah. Are we here already?
Yeah.
Because you don't really – I think district play is overrated for coaches, but not necessarily for fan bases and folks that try to basically do what we do. Yeah. But, man, this is it.
And coming off of last year, this is a bye is the last thing that you would want. You'd want to be able to play all those games considering what you missed out on last year.
Yeah, it's like, wait a minute. We fast-forwarded to week 9, and you're looking at it, and we still probably have, well, for sure in A, probably 3 or 4 legit scenarios that could play out. And in B, who knows? I mean, I think you know the top teams, obviously, in B, but the way that the playoff format will end up shaking out will be nothing short of interesting.
Yeah, and still, again, both classes have some key matchups left here this week that will help determine some things.
So it's for you, it's Millard South and Burke or bust, or are you someplace else?
Prep and Lincoln East. That's the other. I'm trying to decide between those two. It's going to be one of those two. I just don't know which one yet.
So, is there any more contrasting styles than Prep and Lincoln East?
That's well, and I went to Lincoln East and Millard West, so I kind of already seen a similar clash of styles. But yeah, I haven't seen Millard South since the beginning of the season, and obviously a little different currently right now than they were then. But
so if you're Lincoln East, you've kind of been on the back end of that top 10 ranking. Do you look at the seedings with any sort of watchful eye?
I don't know. For a team like them, it's just they've lost 2 games that you're like, ooh. But with how explosive they are, they're capable of, I think, hanging with anybody.
Right.
So that's kind of an interesting team. Like you never quite know what to expect there because there's not much of a running game. They've played well defensively for some stretches and had some lapses in others. So sitting at 6-2, I think that they'd feel confident no matter where they end up. But that's I think one of the kind of one of the bigger wild cards.
Creighton Prep has a chance to gain a tremendous amount of ground. So does Burke. Because Westside and Millard South right now both sitting at 8-0. And for as much maligned as our schedule has been by I mean Omaha Westside, both sitting at 44 wildcard points. It's weird how that sorts itself out, right? Because sometimes it's about what the teams at the back half of the perceived schedule do and how they hold up their end of the deal too.
Yeah. So you said you got Benson to close it out there. So feeling like pretty good, 9-0 there. And then Millard South with Gage Stanger. I know they
kind of in limbo.
Yeah, played North Star and took care of business this past week. And Cam Kozel come in and did a solid job at quarterback. They got a few other guys some snaps as well. A 50-14 win there. But
if you had to take the pendulum and the trend upward, 2 teams that can make a move this week, Omaha Creighton Prep and Omaha Burke.
Yeah, for sure.
Who do you think, who does your gut tell you right now is firmly moving in the right direction?
I think both definitely are.
Do you look at Burke's schedule or no?
Yes, I think you always have to look at the schedule to a certain degree.
Because it's hard to win, period.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, exactly. And especially
did you see what happened to Columbus, right?
Well, and I was there for the season opener. So that's the only time I've seen Burke this year their one loss. And they obviously didn't look like they looked for like for stretch, like you had some talent, you had some athletes there, but weren't ready to play a winning football game yet. And since then, all they've done is win. They figured some things out. It seems like they've gotten better in a lot of different areas. I think those young players, inexperienced players, have kind of figured out what it means to play at this level. And they've got some guys playing at a really high level right now.
I was trying to explain to somebody the other day, I don't know if they necessarily took issue, but wanted to discuss my thoughts on, or our thoughts, because I think you're in agreement here, because we talked about it briefly. With Gage Stanger, whether you think he's the best player in the state or not, I do think he, along with Genatone and Rizak from North Platte, and Rizak Dom, not Teddy or Anthony, at Westside are the most irreplaceable. And for as good as skill as Millard South has with everybody else, right, he makes for whatever the reason, he makes those guys go. Am I missing something in describing that, or how would you put it?
Definitely. I think we'll see this week if he's still out, obviously, that against a higher level of competition. Last couple of weeks, they haven't quite faced the same. They haven't faced another top 7 or so team. They've just kind of taken care of business against teams that they're supposed to. But they've got some guys that are certainly capable. Obviously, Jake Assaway is having a heck of a season on both sides of the ball. Ontrell Taylor is capable of breaking a big one off at any point. And so, some of his plays aren't necessarily Gage Stanger created. It's a little bubble screen and then just finds a way to break a tackle and beat everybody to the end zone. So, but yeah, ultimately, I am interested to see because at the top you got to have a really good quarterback, and I just haven't seen enough from Koziel yet. He's played a lot in backup snaps, but I think that's one where we have to see if he can get those guys the ball and how teams defend when they don't have to worry about Stanger just breaking you off on any given play.
So North Platte and Columbus obviously has some pretty big ramifications for wild card movement. Were you a little disappointed in Columbus's performance against Bellevue West, or do you think Bellevue West is starting to settle into who they are?
A little bit of both. You would have liked to see something other than 62-0 for a team that had been playing some good football
early and often, and they were sharing their wealth. A little L.J. Richardson, a little Caden Helms.
Yeah,
it's. I mean, God, they got options.
Yep. 30 touches for 198 yards and 4 scores for Richardson. Luke Johansson, who's been playing really good football the last handful of weeks.
Especially now that they've kind of settled in.
Yeah. 19 and 25 for 357 and 4 scores. Caden Helms, 6 catches for 203 yards and 3 touchdowns.
I think he just scored again.
Yeah, he has taken off the last second half of the season.
I completely agree. For whatever the criticisms were, if you were not a Bellevue West fan, it was, well, he can't do this, and he only does this, and he doesn't catch the ball well. So you hear all these what he isn't, and all he's done is kind of – and he already doesn't talk a ton. He kind of just minds his own business. He's just gone to work.
Yeah, and – as a result, Bellevue West has gotten on a roll here, and so I wasn't terribly shocked to see this. Like I was like, okay, yeah, Bellevue West is. I mean, they don't. I don't think they react well to a loss in terms of that sticks with them. So they came back ready to work. They figured some things out, and I think they're playing at a really high level too, man. The playoffs are going to be fun here.
Yeah, so it's the curious case of. The one surprise, well, there were a couple. Let's stay in A. Lincoln Southeast. I'm just not so the results against other good teams don't seem to match their personnel. I'm just not sure what I'm missing.
Agreed. It was 42-14 loss at Gretna. And
I mean, Gretna's good.
Yes, but coming off
42-14, I don't know. It just didn't. I think that score, you're like, what happened?
All 3 of their losses are basically by about the same score. They're giving up 40-something. They scored less than 20, basically. Yeah. And so that's 5-3 record, but you've given up 120-some points in those 3 losses. And that's a team that's got some good defensive personnel. They've got some good skill players, too. But for whatever reason, it just isn't isn't coming together. That was another team that they're closing out the season against Elkhorn South that I had on my initial list of games, but kind of after seeing that result, I'm like, I'll look elsewhere.
So it's interesting, right? Because you start looking at the wild card points, Westside and Millard South both at 44 even, Bellevue West at 43,375. Gretna right there at 42.6. Then Elkhorn South at 42.625 as well. Elkhorn South and Gretna right there. How important do you think the middle part of the sandwich is for the playoffs in Class A?
I mean, I think either way you're going to end up. Somebody's going to end up on Millard South side of the bracket. Somebody's going to end up on Bellevue West side. And West Side.
Yeah, because it looks like if we win out, if West Side wins out, they're the 2.
Yeah. So, and then Bellevue West would be the 3. So you got that on one side, and then you got Millard South on the other. So either way, whichever side of the line you're gonna end up on, you're gonna have to face some really good teams. But
you've done this a long time, and maybe I say this every year, but it seems like this year more than almost any matchups. There are just some. I was talking to one of the Metro coaches a couple of days ago. And he was saying, hey, you know who would really give us fits? A team I don't want to play. And I said, well, who's that? And he said, Lincoln East. And I said, oh, that's interesting because for us, we would do this against them, but we wouldn't want to see such and such. And he's like, well, they couldn't score enough against it. It's just weird how I think this one is more about matchups.
Yeah, so looking forward to seeing once we finally get those kind of playoff brackets solidified and we can start breaking down those matchups. But there's some potential for some really fun games once we get to the postseason.
Is there a team out there that you think can play a couple of different ways that isn't as matchup reliant, not named Millard South?
That's a good one because you look at the top 10 here and it might be you guys with the way that Rizak has been playing at quarterback.
We do have some versatility with our athletes, too.
Because you look at Prep and Elkhorn South, both heavily run reliant. Yeah. They've got a few athletes that they can get the ball to occasionally, but it's not going to be a steady diet of passing the ball.
We've got a Carter Hogan, a Grant Guyette, a Caleb Bennett. We got a Teddy Rizak you can throw the ball to.
Yeah, and Gretna Lincoln East is the exact opposite, where they're going to just air it out. Not going to be much in the running game there.
So let me ask you, does Gretna's run game intrigues me because they're capable. It's just, do they want to play like that? I really liked him in the backfield.
Huber's tough, and he grinds out some tough yards. But
he is tough.
I don't know if it's the offensive line that's just more pass pro reliant or shaded. Which
that screen game is ridiculous.
If you're gonna pick one, that would be pretty darn good. So more kind of if that's what the deal is, because Huber's had some really good games, but there are some other games where they just have nothing going on the ground. It's funny. Last week, just looking, they beat Southeast 42-14. They had 2 passing touchdowns, 1 rushing touchdown, all by Flores, I believe. A kickoff return touchdown, a pick 6, and 2 field goals. That's how they got to 42. Because I was looking at the box score, and I saw there were only like 3 offensive touchdowns. Like, are we missing something here? How do you get to 42 points with this? And
it's kind of what gave me the red flags about Lincoln Southeast, because I'm thinking you have an Applegate, you have a Tuioti, you have a Butenbach, you have a Gatula, you have a lot of good individual pieces, and I actually think same guy, but better play at the quarterback spot than a year ago. I don't think that's it. At least the couple of games that I watch on Huddle, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's conservative. Maybe it's just calling games close, but they have good talent.
Yeah. So actually, I think to your question before about kind of team that can do a little bit of both. Obviously, I just saw North Platte this last week come back.
They're intriguing.
Obviously, they're not. They're going to run. They're going to run. They're going to run.
Well, how about Genatone getting help last week? They didn't even need him to play well offensively.
No.
Now, that was scary.
And So you think down 10 with about 6 minutes to go, oh, North Platte is done. There's nowhere they're going to be able to score quickly enough here with the way they run their offense. Well, that wasn't the case. They marched right down the field, and then the go-ahead drive, they had a couple of huge pass plays. And there was a 4th and 9 conversion, gained 16 yards. So he only had 3 completions.
Yeah, we're going to talk to Coach Rice on Friday and what he's been able to do in coming back to North Platte, because I think he came back in maybe 18. Was it 17 or 18? He comes back to North Platte, and it has been. And obviously, we'd love for a Genetone to drop in your lap, but they have some history. What they've been able to do with their travel schedule and being able to play on the road and have teams go there, I think it's nothing short of impressive. It is very hard to travel in Class A, and they've handled it masterfully.
Yeah. So Caleb Tonkinson played really well, and you have to be so assignment sound with them with the way they run that option.
Yeah, they will crease you.
They got different guys flying all over the place. You never know who has the ball. They'll pound it right up the middle with Robley, and he had a solid game. Wasn't quite 240, but he did his job. And then there was just a beautiful drive where they were pounding up, and then Tonkinson just faked the handoff and kept it, snuck right around the edge, walked in untouched because they had set it up so well. So, but I just wanted to touch on them because that was, again, one of the better games I've been to. And Millard West, man, they've had some tough ones. But
hard to believe that team is 2-6 and out of playoff contention.
But sometimes that's your schedule. And if you're not quite at the same level, the record ends up looking even worse than your talent.
He's a better coach than 4 wins in the last 2 years.
So I don't know if I've ever seen this before. 3 guys touch the ball on offense. That was it. 3. They had 1 receiver. It was a tight end.
I don't know if I've ever seen that either.
They had
Just 3.
Yep. They had tight end. That's a big guy going North Dakota.
What? I didn't even think about that.
Trey Staden. Running back, Nathan Peterson.
Fantastic little player.
Yeah.
Great kid. Great player.
Chase Holtman didn't touch the ball. And then quarterback, Brody Peterson. They didn't have any other receivers.
And you find yourself in the game up 2 scores with less than a quarter to play.
A 73-yard scoop and score certainly helped that, but
changed the dynamics of that.
It felt like it was going to, and then North Platte rallied right immediately after they marched down the field again and scored. It's like that was huge. That play right there.
Their ability to answer the sudden change.
If they were punting that thing away, I don't think there's any way they were going to get back. But they put it together. But anyway, just one of the best games last week I had to touch on. The team I was going to talk about was Burke. I think Katsky's interesting. Like he's not a guy that's thrown for 300 yards a game. There's still some accuracy issues, but he can give you enough with his legs. He can give you enough through the air. They've got athletes.
Tough.
Yeah.
Right? So, like he's kind of like, I don't know if you're old enough to remember Timex, right? The watch, like
I have seen those before.
Yeah. Take a licking, keep on ticking. That's Katsky for me. He just keeps coming and coming. Moody's like that. They're more than just Jackson. They've gotten to be pretty good up front along the offensive line. They're a little undersized outside of Bell, but they're tough. Shoot, their best offensive lineman may be a 200-pounder. So you watch them play, and it's like, can they get enough stops defensively, I think, is ultimately what it's going to boil down to for them.
And that's where you rely on your experienced guys. They've got some playmakers. They got to go out and make plays. It's got to be Devin Jackson. It's got to be Alec Cook. It's got to be Trey Starks on the back end. Those guys have to make some big plays every game against tough competition. But I think there's enough there. I think they've got a little bit more at quarterback than some of the other run-heavy teams, and they've got some good skill in the backfield as well. And Jackson is obviously a guy that you can use in a gadget role. So I think they're a little bit more well-rounded than a lot of the other top 10 teams, but it really is those top 3 seeds that are, I think, the most balanced.
Yeah, the Trey Starks, if you're looking for a great storyline with Burke and Millard South, while everybody talks about the guys, right, the Trey Starks gas away kind of matchup is very intriguing for me. 2 very understated, really good players for both teams. When everybody talks about all the other guys.
And who don't come off the field, get it done on both sides of the ball. I do hope we see those guys just kind of matched up
right?
all game long.
If you're talking about the all underappreciated team, that's got to be kind of led by Gasaway and Starks, right?
Yeah.
I mean, for whatever, and some of it is, and I'm talking about Jake, not so much Justin, even though Justin's come a long way, especially defensively. Most of it is Jake's personality because he doesn't say a ton. He's not one of those guys that's chomping at the bit to talk to, and do this interview and that interview. He's been committed for a while to Northern Illinois, and I think he kind of flies under the radar. And then you look at the stats, and it's like, well, he's right there with some of the top guys in the state, and they get a lot of accolades. And then Starks for Burke does so much of the dirty work, the coverage, the tackling out in space, the key catch on third down, the running after the catch. Like, two pretty unsung guys that are really good players.
Yeah. Guy that obviously not unsung. We talked about Lincoln East last. Noah Walters, 19 for 21 for 350 yards and 5 touchdowns, and carried the ball 18 times for a score. And Malachi Coleman, 3 catches for 197 yards and 3 touchdowns. Had a 93-yard touchdown on a broken play. Last week, Charmar Brown, 16 carries, 196 yards, and 2 scores in Prep's 37 win over Papio South. Devin Jones has been on a tear since he's gotten back. He had
when healthy, he's pretty fantastic.
He had
tough kid at Papio South.
313 yards and 6 touchdowns the last 2 weeks. Not too bad. So good to see him healthy and back making a difference. Jaden Page, 190 yards on the ground and 3 scores for Central, who did not complete a pass. Jaden Bullion, another 111 yards and 3 scores.
He's kind of freaky. Right? When he gets it going, you can hand it to him. He's really good on defense. He's a big, strong kid. Do you remember watching him play basketball like 3 or 4 years ago, and you're like, then you see him in 2021, and you're like, he's been in the weight room, and he has just grown like a much different body type than you thought you may be getting.
Yeah, and then Tashawn Porter for Omaha North, 37 carries for 290 yards and a touchdown in their 35-20 win over Fremont, and they've quietly gotten back to 3-5 after the rough start to the season. So that's some of the other top standouts in Class B or Class A. Class B.
I don't even.
We can't get through here without mentioning what Rashad Madden did last week
for Ralston. Yeah, he's fantastic.
We talked about him last week. He's
it kind of spoke it into existence, right?
Because obviously you've got Meneses and Mostic that are just absolute monsters, but Rashad Madden's pretty darn good in Class B, too, and he carried the ball 30 times for 412 yards, a Class B record, and 3 touchdowns, and then caught a 57-yard pass.
How fitting is it? Not only are we in your wheelhouse with Ralston, we don't have to go there with the old Padilla and Ralston connection, but he broke Isaac Wallace's record, who is a Ralston Ram. Like, that had to be pretty cool.
Yeah, so it's huge. Obviously, Meneses, 263, 4 scores on 38 carries, and Platte Smith and Bennington both, they got pushed a little bit. Obviously, they won handily, but they also played some better teams, and I think both Roncalli and Beatrice kind of showed well for themselves.
How about, you talk about tough schedule, so getting ready to put Beatrice in that Waverly discussion in terms of tough schedules, especially in the second half of the season. How about this, though, with Bennington and Platte Smith being 1-2 and Bennington having a full 0.3 more wild card, 45 points to 42.
Wow.
And they both are 8-0. You talk about a schedule. Bennington has played a schedule 45 wild card points heading into week 9, and they have a full 3-point cushion over the next best.
I mean, they're having a special season.
Seriously, though. I mean, Platte Smith is really good, and they still only have the 42 wild card points, and you can't really – I'm over whining about Platte Smith's schedule, especially after what they did in the playoffs last year, and say what you want about Bennington's injuries. I'm not – listen, that's part of it. So I'm never going to take that away from a team, but Platte Smith had proven that they belong, and people got on their schedule early. It's toughened up late. They're right there standing, and Bennington still finds themselves a full 3 points ahead.
And now Kramer's back, which is a big deal for them. Had another good game.
Yeah, it gives them a little bit different dimension to hit big plays vertically, especially off of that run action.
Yeah, Mostic against Roncalli, ho-hum, 25 for 302, 5 touchdowns. Just doing what he does. Trey Bird, again, an efficient game, 12 of 14 for 247 yards and 2 touchdowns. He's continues to do exactly what they need him to do. He's really turned into a really nice player.
So is that plug and play? Is Bennington High now plug and play for quarterbacks?
Well, and you losing Tyler LeClaire last year, and you've seen what Mostic has done this year as the lead guy in the backfield. You've seen a guy like Austin Holtz.
You had Bird, then Weapon, then another Bird. It's
Yeah.
like it doesn't matter who takes snaps for Bennington at the quarterback spot. They flourish.
Yep. So, again, both those teams, Bennington won 56-38 against Roncalli, and we'll close up with Gross this week.
So when you look at, we think we believe in Seward. Okay.
And they'll get a chance to prove it this week to close out the season against Aurora.
Right.
Who's playing really good football right now.
I was just getting ready to say, and we think we believe in Aurora. Something's going to give this week.
Yeah. And Aurora, 41-26 win over Grand Island Northwest last week. Improved 6-2 now. And they're hosting Seward at their place, too.
Really kind of changed, in my opinion, the trajectory for Grand Island Northwest, who drops to 4-4. And kind of now drops into that bottom 4 of the top 16 from 12 on down, which is they're tied in wild card points at 38-7 with Norris. I think they've kind of earned better than that, but it is what it is now.
And they're both in the same bucket where we like the talent. There's some good players on those teams, but their schedule is just so tough. Like all 4 of their losses have come against teams. They're like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Norris beat Lincoln, jumped up class A, handled Lincoln Pius the 10th last week, so they're 4-4 as well now, and they'll close out against Waverly, so another tough one.
Now, Scott's getting ready to be healthy for the most part. Do you think you feel you know the most about Aurora, Scott, or Scotts Bluff?
Probably Scott, just because I've seen them. I haven't seen either of the other two in person, so I think I know the most about Scott if Becker and Holton are playing.
Which changes them dramatically, right? But still, so the thing with Scott, though, is who do they want to be on offense? Do they want to throw it around the yard, or do they want to run the football, right? Because I would actually take a look at using Caden Becker as kind of a run-first quarterback in terms of that offense. Gives you some QB power. It protect a little younger, smaller offensive line. Like, how they play, I think, will determine how far they go.
Yeah, and that's right now, the last week of the regular season and postseason. Hopefully, get them back, get all your pieces out there. Now's the time they've got to kind of really figure out, all right, what's going to work here, because they're closing out the schedule with a tough one against Elkhorn, 5-6 in Mike Sauter's coaches rankings.
And so Elkhorn still with just the one loss, and it was to a good Bennington bunch, but they got handled pretty good.
Yeah, and coming off a 35-12 win at Elkhorn North. For
some reason, that kept trending on my – and maybe it's because I wasn't playing and I'm out and about and I'm watching games and I'm checking Twitter. But the Elkhorn North feed kept coming across my Twitter timeline. I was like, plenty of plays to be made, or there are a lot of Elkhorn North fans. Was it dominating your feed, or was that just me?
Since I was at a game, I wasn't able to stay on the phone very much.
I forgot what happened. See, you're at a game, and you're in your notepad taking stats. I'm at a game. I'm watching and reading. I don't write down
I got to write something about it, so I got to have something to go off of.
The difference between a professional and not. That's Jacob Padilla. I'm ODB. Real quick, as we hear the music, you got Burke and Millard South as kind of the premier matchup. Maybe you like Prep and East, or is it Seward and Aurora? What's the indicator tell you in terms of I can learn a ton in week 9?
I think probably that Millard South Burke game, maybe not long term, because Millard South, if they get Stanger back, is a different team, but we'll have to see how long can they get by without Stanger. If Burke comes out and wins this game and looks good doing it, you feel really good about Burke, and then you kind of worry, like, all right, when is Stanger coming back, or can they make it there? I think that one's pretty interesting.
I tell you what, if they handle Burke without Stanger, look out.
Oh, yeah.
Millard South, if they do get Stanger back, and that's coming as a West Side guy. I'm just keeping it real. Again, that's Jacob Padilla. I'm ODB. That's a quick 30 minutes. Nebraska Preps postgame will be back next Wednesday previewing the playoffs. Wow. In my best Jim Moore voice already. Back next week.
A Hurrdat Media Production.